Greetings and welcome to another episode of Emerging Tech Talk. I'm your host, Dan York, and today I want to talk about microblogging and open source, and specifically some announcements recently around Identica and Jaiku. Now, if you're not familiar with microblogging, it's very quickly the sending of small status updates, popularized most by Twitter, but certainly now in Facebook, LinkedIn, available for internal sites all over the place, and basically any kind of social networking service has the ability to send out status updates and to reply as well, or to subscribe. And an interesting aspect is that it's not just one-to-one communication, but it's one-to-many. You can post your updates, and as many people as you allow, if you let them to be public, can be able to see them. So in the space of open source, let's talk about two announcements. One was that Identica, or more precisely the company Control Yourself Inc. up in Montreal, received some funding to further develop the work that's going on with Identica and laconica. Now, to explain a bit about this, and I've written about it on our blogs.voxeo.com, and last summer in July I spoke at the Open Source Convention sponsored by O'Reilly and gave a number of demos about how to add voice to Identica, how to read your Identica updates, do some things like that. And my presentation is up on our blogs.voxeo.com/Voxeo Developers Corner blog, and you can find it there through a search for Identica. But anyway, Identica is an open source program, but actually Identica is the site, identi.ca, which provides kind of the major or the reference implementation of the laconica software. So let's back up. Laconica is software that sits on your server. It provides you with a microblogging platform. If you wanted to do internal microblogging behind the firewall, you could use it. And in fact, there's a client called Twirl, which you can use, which will give you a nice GUI that you can have on your desktop, which could interact with your own internal laconica server. Now, laconica, the nice thing about it is that you can federate with other laconica servers, or you can subscribe to people running on another laconica server. So if you want to follow my updates, you could potentially subscribe to my information on my laconica server, and you would be able to see them in your feed on your local laconica server. Now, if you think a minute, we don't host all of our web content on a single big giant web server out there. Instead, we have web servers spread out all over the internet. We all have them running on our corporate networks. Many of us may have them on our home networks or on our ISPs networks. We have them all over the place. So we're able to get from one web page to another through the links that we have that point to URLs, Uniform Resource Locators. So we're able to go, and if you go to www.voxeo.com, you'll see our web information there. If you go to blogs.voxeo.com, you'll see our information there. If you go to one of my other sites, you'll see the information there. It's all on distributed web servers, but yet we can link between them. But with Twitter, we're locked into using one microblogging service. And last summer, we certainly saw some of the problems when there were a number of failures and Twitter was not working so well. So Identica provides a way for us to do distributed microblogging. Now, it's still an evolving software. It still takes a bit to get it installed and working. But what's fascinating about that is that we could wind up with a distributed architecture when it's all over that allows us to be able to subscribe across, to federate, and not be reliant on central servers. Key aspect, I think, in the long-term picture of a distributed architecture over the internet. So the announcement this past couple weeks was that Identica got more funding. I continue to be interested in seeing where that all goes. The other announcement that came out was that Google was basically ending their formal development around Jaiku, Jaiku, which was a competitor of Twitter. It actually came out, if I recall my chronology correctly, it came out a little bit before Twitter, but it didn't have quite the same buzz and didn't get as many interconnections as Twitter did. Twitter immediately had a very easy API, very easy for people to connect to, and Jaiku did not at the beginning, or Jaiku, however you want to say it. But Google bought Jaiku, and supposition for a while was that Google was going to try to have a Twitter competitor. Well, now, as part of their recent restructuring, they've gone and shut down a number of services, but they've pushed Jaiku out into the open source space and allowed some Google developers to continue to work on it and to use it. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that as it becomes used out there, maintained. and to see what happens. Will it eventually be something else that people could install on their own system for internal microblogging? Will it emerge and have the kind of federation or distributed characteristics that Laconica has? I don't know the answer. But what's interesting is that now we will have another option, potentially, within the open source space that long-term may give us a plan B if services like Twitter and others go their own ways or don't meet our performance expectations, or if we want something different or under more control. So those are two services out there. I'll look forward to seeing what happens as they continue to evolve and as we continue to look at microblogging as a new way to communicate among us. You can find me at identica.com. No, it's not .com. Identica/dyork. identi.ca/dyork. We have an identica./voxeo out there as well, and at some point I'll start publishing our blog posts out there like I do for Twitter. In the meantime, if you have comments, please feel free to leave them here at blogs.voxeo.com/ett, or you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/voxeo. Or you can email me at dyork@voxeo.com. Thanks, until another time, this is Dan York saying goodbye.